Alright everyone, another stunning victory for U.S. foreign policy under the auspices of the Biden administration. With Biden as the de facto chief diplomat currently of the United States, the buck really does stop there. If something popped off when Donald Trump was there, even if it had nothing to do personally with him, he got the blame for it. This is typically what happens with presidents of the United States. Sometimes they manage to deflect. Joe Biden is centrally responsible for the situation in West Africa right now that nobody else apparently wants to talk about. I've seen very little political commentary about this. A major alliance, which is ECOWAS, fractured. It's led by a fairly large military, which is the Nigerians, which share a border with Niger. You've got Boko Haram running around and militants and shit like that. And there had been an attempt to cross-train and try to suppress the militants. Well, good luck, asshole. Good luck doing that now, because Niger just expelled the United States. They said the remnant troops that they drew down the number of troops from like 1,000 to like 600, and they were involved in counterterrorism operations to try to help the fractious ECOWAS alliance deal with especially Boko Haram and some of these other militants and criminals in the area. One of the few humanitarian missions that actually makes sense. Dude, most of the time, U.S. military shows up and it's a bad idea. Attempting to suppress a group that blows up archaeological relics, gang rapes women, and abducts children is probably justified, especially when all the nations in the area agreed it was a good idea. Now, we're not invading anyone's soil. We're there with the full consent of the nations there, and people in certain parts of Niger and Nigeria are absolutely fucking terrified of these groups. So it sort of made sense. But now, we can't do anything. The French got expelled first. The government of Niger said, well, you're just here for colonial reasons. Get the fuck out. And so they left. Then the United States decided to send a diplomatic envoy to Niger to try to negotiate, to try to talk some sense into them for counter-terrorism purposes. What happens? And I wouldn't expect anything less from an administration as feckless as Joe Biden's. They show up and they don't show proper courtesy and act like they're in charge of the nation, giving the impetus for people who are West skeptic in the first place to simply expel the ambassadors, tell them to fuck their own mothers, and then kick the troops out. Wonderful. Yeah, there's another country now that'll have more problems with militants, and there's literally nothing that we can do about it. Short of ECOWAS getting into a war. Now, there are solutions to this. It's quite clear that more diplomacy needs to be done with them and also with Burkina Faso. But you're not going to get that under Joe Biden, because clearly the diplomatic envoys are incompetent, which again does not surprise me. It trickles down. Joe Biden does not understand the ways of most of the world. He understands common courtesy if he visits Britain. He understands how to talk to Justin Trudeau. He understands how to talk to Emmanuel Macron. He has no problem with these things. Germany can be a little bit iffy sometimes, but that's usually the case. It's Germany. Just forgive them. But if Joe Biden travels to China, is he going to be capable of doing anything diplomatically of any note? No. He's going to get run roughshod over. If he goes, or if envoys are sent, diplomats, whatever, if they go to Niger, how do you act when you're in a country like that? You have to be respectful. Yes, it's self-evident. The United States is much more diplomatically important, and we could bomb Niger out of existence in 24 hours. Are you supposed to wiggle your dick around LBJ style and flaunt that in front of other countries? No, not generally speaking. You show strength when you're talking to your allies that are within a military alliance and shit like that, and say, well, look at our new aircraft carrier and stuff like that, and you impress them, and it makes them feel calm and happy about being part of your alliance and stuff. When you have a country that was part of a Western alliance, and clearly that's on the fritz, you don't show up and disrespect them. You show up with great respect and humility, and you tell them how awesome your country is, and oh yeah, people are beautiful, and your food's lovely and stuff. You make sure, apparently, they didn't even tell them that they were coming. They didn't even bother to do them the basic courtesy that you would do with even the most minor of nations and say, hey, can we schedule a visit? Because we'd like to talk to you. Apparently, they just showed up, wiggled their wangs around, and strutted around like fucking ostriches, thinking that they were hot shit and expected this not to happen. We know Niger is a minor economy. With a lackluster military capability, it's also overrun with militants that we're trying to fight, and you're not even showing the government that's at least so thus far had been facilitating that and allowing you to stay there. You're not even willing to show them the courtesy of a phone call beforehand. It makes no sense. Now, when a country that clearly is breaking off towards a more Eastern Bloc stance complains about your diplomats, normally you would say, okay, they're just being whiners. They're looking for an excuse as to why they're kicking us out of the country. And so they're trying to explain to their people why that base is now empty and why there are more terrorists around. But in the case of the Biden administration, I actually trust the government of Niger is being accurate in its reporting with regards to the behavior of the diplomats that showed up. I wouldn't expect anything less. I mean, look at our foreign policy. It makes no sense. We strong-arm Ukraine while giving them massive amounts of funding. Biden can't make up his mind whether he condemns or doesn't condemn Israel for any particular action that it manages to accomplish. It doesn't make any sense. He can't even condemn an illegal immigrant for raping and killing a young college-age girl, and then has to come out and apologize for using the term illegal alien. You know, you're not going to get anything better from this administration. This is why we need Trump back. Trump would probably be able to get Niger back into ECOWAS. At a bare minimum, what we should be doing is pressuring Nigeria to admit Morocco, because Morocco is also another major military presence for that region. They've got a ton of tanks and airplanes and stuff. Flank this new East Bloc alliance with Morocco on one side and Nigeria on the other, and they're not going to pop off, because they don't have the means. There aren't enough troops, there certainly is not enough armor, and they would lose, they don't have any air support. I don't even know that, I think Niger has, if I remember correctly, 2 military jets. 2 of them. Morocco has hundreds, Nigeria has hundreds of them. Well, it's kind of going to be a lopsided battle now, isn't it? Plus, the United States can definitely exert more influence over Morocco. They're our long-standingest friend. Most people don't know about the U.S.-Moroccan Treaty of Friendship, by the way. It's rather unfortunate they do. If I was President of the United States, that'd be my first state visit, honoring that. Talk about a way to draw diplomatically, and eat some good food in the process. Then take a tour of some of those other countries in the region and try to buff things up, because quite clearly, after Joe Biden shits all over everything, it's going to take a long time to buff things up. Donald Trump has his work cut out for him if he's reelected, by the way. Especially within foreign policy. It is a goddamn disaster. Hell, part of it involves the U.S. southern border. Diplomacy with Mexico breaks down, and the Mexicans tell us that they're not going to cooperate quite so much anymore. Trump and Obrador seem to be rather on friendly terms, which is interesting because supposedly Trump hates Mexicans. Unless they're making him a taco or something like that. Diplomacy's a mess. Yeah, we just got expelled diplomatically and militarily from yet another country. This has happened several times under Joe Biden's watch. Sudan is collapsing. Gaza's collapsing. Ukraine, that's a fucking disaster. Venezuela, at any moment, the commies could invade Guyana. Do I really think that Joe Biden would have a coherent response to that? No, I don't think that he'd be able to do anything at all. They'd send some diplomats over to the Venezuela so they can get beheaded or something like that. No, if none of this would be happening if Donald Trump had been reelected. Literally none of it. Russia would not have invaded Ukraine. China would not rattle sabers around Taiwan. You wouldn't have what's going on in Israel v. Gaza. Sudan probably wouldn't be collapsing, actually. The militants there, I mean, there'd be a formulated strategy of how to combat them. ECOWAS wouldn't have begun to collapse more. None of this was necessary. Think of the millions and millions of people that are losing their lives and the tens millions more losing their livelihood simply because Joe Biden got elected. People in the United States need to understand. I know that we're supposed to think of ourselves first. I'm America first for a reason. But I do actually give at least a topical damn about random civilians in other countries because they're still human beings. Joe Biden simply does not know how to talk to these countries. He doesn't understand their customs. This is again why Afghanistan collapsed. It's simply due to Pashtun culture and the idea that once something's agreed upon, you follow through with it. But Joe Biden couldn't be bothered to fucking understand that. Trump should have called him up and say, hey, you're making a grave mistake. You're going to collapse the country. Do you think Biden would have listened, though? No. I mean, even if you could hear him through his half-deafness. That's about all. Peace out.